as you may currently know, that I'm on a slight period of going on diet sort of period, but I'm in an extremely good mood today because I'm now less than a K away from when I was getting married, and then I just like my weight shot up, but now I've brought it more or less all the way down, so a couple more K to go and I'm done. So hopefully I'll be in even better mood towards the end. I've never actually had a attempt to control weight before. It actually had a huge effect on your sort of like emotional sort of like it's mood swings and stuff like that. So definitely not something to do again. Today's lecture will cover most of the material on profit maximization, and then it will definitely cover most of this roughly. I don't think I'll finish everything, but most of the material on cost minimization as well. Okay, so that's that. I have had a couple of feedbacks that I shan't name names, but obviously, you know, I gotta keep the confidentiality. But I have heard from unknown source that my British accent plus my speed of talking is causing slight problem in sort of comprehension-wise, you know, listening-wise. Well, so I try and speak slightly slower for the remainder of the term as much as I can. Okay? But you gotta be prepared for this accent as well, because nowadays, you know, most of you have to do TOEIC, TOEFL, IELTS, whatever. Listening test now doesn't just comprise American accent, but there's a great mix of American, Australian, and British accents. So hopefully this will give you some opportunity. This will be a sort of hard landing opportunity for you guys, okay? Now, we talked about profit maximization towards the end of Wednesday. Okay, so it looks like no point for today either. Now, I derived the optimal condition in terms of calculus first. What was the key finding? What was the key prediction of a profit maximizing firm's choice of labor or capital demand? That's something that I highlighted over and over again, saying it's one of the most important results in producer theory. Important means important, okay? So what's the prediction? Okay, well, let's write down in a sentence and let's remember everything. You earn what you marginally contribute to the production. In other words, the firm hires workers or buys or rents machines up to a point where the marginal value created by that worker or that machine, so that's marginal product times the price. price 곱하기 있어야 되죠. 그래서 정확히 하자면 so this is how much that additional worker or that additional machine is contributing towards your firm's revenue. That is how much you must pay to obtain that factor. If it generates something better than what you pay him as a wage, you got to hire him or her or it. If it doesn't generate as much value for the firm, yet takes away, a certain amount of pay, then you gotta not. Knowing and, if you like, measuring that marginal product of labor is a very difficult concept. And that's why you can have sort of revealed axioms of revealed profit maximization and stuff like that, but I'm not going to cover that deliberately. But one thing that I want to highlight is that, a firm will hire a worker until up to the point where they are sure that they will at least get as much out of that worker. 그 정도는 뽑아낼 수 있을 것이다라고 자신이 있을 때 그 사람을 hire 하겠죠. That's the firm's profit maximizing point. Now, we looked at it from a calculus-based perspective. 미적분으로는 봤고요, 이미. We gotta do it graphically today. Now, we talked about ISO profit line, 등, 이윤, 곡선. What was that? It was this line. Profit was revenue minus cost on labor. If you like, X1 is labor and X2 is capital, then that's cost of labor minus total cost of capital. You can't do anything about capital in the short run. Why? Because the definition of short run, 단기의 정의가 뭐였죠? At least one factor of production must be a fixed quantity. 써져 있습니다. So, you can't do anything about this. The two variables the only variable that you can choose is this X1, labor. Choosing a different level of X1 will lead to a different level of output. The fewer the workers, the smaller the output. The more the workers, the more the output. But for each level of profit, pi, suppose, I don't know, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever, there will be all combinations of X1 and Y that will satisfy and yield the firm a particular level of profit. 특정한 수준의 이윤을 주는 모든 X1과 Y의 조합들이 있을 거다라고 했습니다. And it must be upward sloping. Hiring more worker means you're paying him more. Paying the workers more. If you want to still hold on to the same level of profit, the workers must do what and compensate the firm? Produce more output. Otherwise, if they don't produce more, the firm is just paying more to the workers and nothing else. Their profit must fall. That's the reason why this ISO profit line must always be upward sloping. Each line corresponds to a given level of profit. That's $10, $0, whatever. But what we know is that the higher the intercept, y절편이 높을수록, what can we conclude? 신희철 학생, 늦게 들어오신. 무엇을 할 수 있습니까? 이게 등 이윤 곡선이 높아진다는 것의 의미는 뭡니까? 프로핏이 늘어난다. 간단하죠? The higher the line, the whichever ISO profit line that you are, the higher the line, the higher the profit. Exactly. So what will the firm try to do, graphically speaking? What will the firm try to do? If it's a profit maximizing firm, what must be its rational choice? You have to try and claw to as high a ISO profit line as possible. That suddenly reminded me of that speech in Al Pacino's Any Given Sunday, if you've seen it. But claw to the fingernails to get to that top of the... anyway, right. So the highest ISO profit line that you can attain is your profit maximizing point. Okay? Now remember that there's a Y and X1 space. If you increase labor, how much will your output increase by? So that's your objective, trying to get onto as high an ISO profit line as possible. 여러분의 objective, 목적인 겁니다. 뭐가요? 최대한 높은 등 이윤 곡선으로 가서 가장 높은 profit, 이윤을 남기려고 하는 게. But what's the constraint? For every objective, there's got to be a constraint. That's the intuition that you're learning through and through and through in this microeconomics lecture. 뭐죠? 여기서 constraint가 뭡니까? Technology, exactly. The production function is your constraint. The production function determines where a firm can operate. Suppose that if I were to hire just 한대건 학생 and then, okay, you got to produce 1 million iPhones by 7 o'clock today. If we can do that, that's good. You know, I can earn like 3 trillion wons worth of profit in like a year or something like that. And he'll probably die of like overworking in about a week. But that's not a realistic constraint, is it? 워커 한 명이 2시간에 뭐 아이폰을 뭐 1억 개를 만든다. 이런 게 가능한 게 아니잖아요. The nature, the technology determines what you can produce. And that is embodied in your production function. When x1 is at certain level, the nature, the technology will determine how much output you can produce. So the firm must choose a point on the production function where the highest ISO profit line can be attained, like this. Suppose that you're here. Is this a feasible point? 생산할 수 있는 가능한 포인트인가요? 아닌가요? 여기는. 가능하죠. It's on your production function. You can produce. What's the problem with this point? By hiring more worker, what can you do? You can increase your profit. Suppose you're here. Is this a feasible point? Of course it is. But by reducing your labor, you can increase your profit. So where will you end up? You will end up at a point where your ISO profit line, finish the sentence please, is tangential to the production function. What's the slope of the ISO profit line? It's W1 over P. Yep. And what is the slope of the production function? The slope of the production function is you're holding x2 constant and you're changing x1 little by little, as Oasis once sang. So, what's that concept called? Marginal product of labor, or marginal product of this factor 1. So at this point of optimality, what are we going to get? W1 over P equals MP1. In our calculus, what we got was this. They're just the same thing. Bring it here, and you're done. So the key insight remains the same. You can do it graphically, you can do it using calculus, but the insight, the key finding, the key prediction is clear. Hiring a worker must mean that that worker will generate at least as much revenue to the firm as he is paid. 걔가 가져가는 임금만큼은 최소한 뭐로써? 그 회사에 갑자기 revenue가 생각이 안 나니. 수입으로서 generate를 해줘야 된다. 그래야 수입하고 비용이 맞을 거 아닙니까? So that's the only way that you can maximize your profit. Okay? So you can do a lot of comparative statistics with this. Okay. Suppose that, now some people asked, hang on, but wage and price are things that are fixed. So how can they be equated to marginal product of labor? 아니 임금이랑 뭐 가격이랑 이런 게 정해져 있는 건데 걔들이 어떻게 프로덕션 펑션의 MPL이라는 컨셉하고 맞춰질 수 있습니까? That's the wrong way to think about it. The firm's choice is the factor of production, not the wage or price. You take that as given. Now, we are familiar with a situation where the firm sets wage rather than the firm hires worker. But actually, here the wage really represents the sort of the level of wage paid in other competitive firms that are close to you. You know, if you're Oracle, you might think, how much is Cisco paying? How much is ADP paying? If you're, I don't know, JTBC, then you might want to know how much are my competitors, Channel A and TVN and everyone else paying. Yep. So wage is not something that you can control. Price is not something that you can control either. What can you control? Given that wage and that price, holding them to be constant, you can't influence it. 내가 임금이랑 가격은 어찌할 수 없으니 however I choose in terms of hiring workers, the amount of labor, your chosen level of labor will constantly change your marginal product of labor. So that's how you equate the two. Your choice of how many labor, how many workers to hire, that changes your MPL, and that will be equated to the wage over price in equilibrium. 내가 몇 명을 고용할 거냐, 고용을 여기서 바꿀 거냐 말 거냐, 그 선택이 결국 내 marginal product of labor의 변화로 내가 여기에 있을 거냐, 여기에 있을 거냐, 여기에 있을 거냐 선택해서 should I be here, should I be here, should I be here, should I be here? At each point, you're effectively changing your MPL. So there will always be one particular point where that MPL equals to that external force, wage and price. Okay? Put together. So the comparative statistics is quite easy. What happens if the wage of factor 1 increases? So, you know, your competitors are paying a lot more wage, so you have to pay more to attract workers. Well, your ISA profit line will shift, so sort of like become steeper. That means that the point of tangency will now lie to the left of where it was before. 왼쪽으로 가죠? 그죠? What does that mean? If that factor becomes more costly, more expensive to hire, you will hire less of it. If workers demand so much more wage, then what will the firm do? Let machine do the job. That's the simple logic. Same with P. If the P falls, so you have to sell your good at a lower price, but you're still compensating the worker as much as before. The wage remains the same, the price goes down, same effect. The worker is simply not generating enough revenue for the firm. The worker is still making that same 100 질소칩 per hour, but that means, you know, people are not buying it. It means less to the firm. It doesn't generate as much revenue for the firm as before. Same conclusion. The firm will hire less labor than before. So the sort of intuition, I hope, is not too difficult here, okay? In the long run, however, So let's distinguish between short run and long run once again. In the long run, the firm is free to choose between both factors of production optimally. In other words, I think I used the example of 한주선 학생 on Wednesday. In the short run, the rented store space is fixed. The amount of part-time labor to make hairbands and accessories, that's the only thing you could change. But if you're making more profit, then what will you do? You hire more space, you find more machines, etc., etc. So that's sort of what Tesla is doing at the moment. For a long time, for about 3 or 4 years, Tesla couldn't meet the orders on Model S because it just didn't have enough production capacity. But now that they're building a huge new factory with Panasonic, they are increasing their production capacity so that they can meet that amazing demand, 500,000 cars almost, of their Model 3. 테슬라가 진짜 재밌는 경우입니다. So, in the long run, the firm will choose both factors of production optimally. What that means is the firm will equate the marginal product of labor to the wage of labor. The firm will equate marginal product of capital to the capital's wage or rental rate. 자본을 빌리는데 드는 비용이 곧 그 자본의 한계 생산과 맞아 떨어져야 될 거고, 한계 생산과 한계 생산 가치가 되겠죠. 정확히는 P 곱하기니까. And then 노동자들의 임금은 또 노동자들의 한계 생산 곱하기 가격, 즉 한계 생산의 가치가 되겠죠. So that means that has two equations, two unknowns, x1 and x2. So you can solve it using some sort of simultaneous equation. I'm not gonna be mean and ask you to do that in the exam, okay? I'm not gonna come up with a random parameter and then random sort of line of equations and stuff. But in the long run, it's worth considering how profit responds to varying levels of production scales. Suppose that long-run maximized value of profit is given by this. You find the optimal labor, you find optimal capital. You're paying them that much, they generate that much amount of output. As a result, you get pi star amount of profit. Okay? That can be negative, that can be positive, that can be zero, whatever. My question to you is, if your production function has constant returns to scale property. Now, what's the constant returns to scale? So, someone with a good grasp of math might find this problematic here. Suppose pi star is strictly positive and production function has constant returns to scale. That's the key point. x1, x2, y. If you double x1, you double x2, then you double the output. So it's 2 times everything, which means your profit will also double. If you're earning $1 million before, by doubling labor and capital, you earn $2 million. If you double labor and capital again, you earn $4 million, $8 million, $16 million, $32 million, $64 million, $128 million. You get the point, basically. 256, whatever. What that means is there's a potential to increase profit without limit. Doesn't sound right. So you're already beginning to see that this type of industry only becomes truly sustainable when there is zero profit. You double the capacity, 2 times 0 is 0. 4 times 0 is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. That's the only stable outcome you're going to get. You're going to see this in about a week when we begin to talk about something called perfect competition. 완전 경쟁 대충 들어보신 분들도 있고 한번 커버하신 분들도 있을 겁니다. 자, the key point about the perfect competition is that it's going to have this sort of constant returns to scale. And then the key prediction you're going to get is that actually there will be zero profit. That zero profit doesn't mean that the firm is generating zero amount of money on paper, on the accounting financial statement. I asked you to differentiate between accounting profit and economic profit. Does anyone remember the difference? I used the example of 유범진 학생 and then my crap attempt at 경상도 사투리 as well, remember? And then said if he's working for 20 hours a week at his parents' Japanese restaurant, that doesn't mean the fact that he doesn't get paid, gets father's love in return, doesn't mean that his labor should be valued at zero. The correct one was opportunity cost. So zero economic profit means the same thing. It also values each entrepreneur. So going back to that example of 한주선 학생's example, the young entrepreneur starting a startup, a couple of my friends have already done that too. The true meaning of zero economic profit is you're earning just about the money that you're indifferent between moving to another industry and staying in. If you move to somewhere else, suppose if you go back to consulting, if you go back to accounting, whatever, you will earn exactly as much money as before. That's the meaning of zero economic profit. So that will correspond to some amount of positive accounting profit, obviously. Okay? Now, revealed profitability, I'm probably going to just skip this mostly, but what I'm going to tell you is this. Observing indifference curve is the difficult part in consumer theory. The same problem that we see in producer theory is production function. No firm enters into the industry having a huge chart of labor 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, capital 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, output 20, 30, 45, 50, 60. You don't have a full concrete idea of your production function. Yeah? What you see instead is under a very different set of wages and prices and stuff, the firm chose here, the firm chose here, the firm chose here, whatever. Okay? Then you can probably draw a line like that or something like that and try and narrow down where your production function can and cannot be. Just like we did it revealed preference. Okay? But to me, at least, I think this revealed profitability and what we're going to see later as well is less important than in consumer theory. The reason being, narrowing down the consumer's preference to a particular set of indifference curve is a very important activity. How do consumers feel about it? How do consumers behave? That's a really unobservable thing that the researchers are absolutely interested in. Production function-wise, the firm really sort of learns by doing, and it gets a very good idea very quickly anyway. I start off with 5 people. Doesn't seem to be right. I hire more, I hire less. The firm learns very quickly, and the firm knows its production function really well. So that's less of an interest. That's why, even though that material might be of interest to some people, I'm going to skip for the purpose of exam. Okay? I'm not going to ask you that, in other words. One area where this revealed profitability comes useful is in sort of government context, because generally the firm has a better idea about its production function than the government. So if the government wants to find out whether that Chinese company has been dumping the products or not, whether a couple of firms have been engaging in cartels, 담합해서 가격 확 올렸다든지, stuff like that, the firms will claim that, hang on, no, we haven't done any cartel, it's just increase in cost. The government then has to look at a firm's choice of labor and capital under different circumstances and try and figure out what the firm's production function must be like. So this is where it becomes useful. But production function changes so quickly that that method doesn't become useful. People's preferences don't change that quickly. I don't know. People's preferences do change to an extent, but that requires a major sort of a lifetime event. For example, I very much enjoyed wearing red until my wife told me sort of while we were dating that red doesn't look good on you at all. Ever since then, all my red and pink sort of colored clothes have gone to charity. I've given it away to somewhere else. So until that sort of life event happens, your preferences are something that are really fixed for a long time. You like pasta, you like pasta. You like sushi, you like sushi. It doesn't change that quickly. Your taste, if you like wearing high heels, you will like wearing high heels. If you like Birkenstock to wear in summer, you wear Birkenstock in summer. That's the preference. But production function is so volatile. The nature of the technology changes so quickly. That's the pace of industrial revolution at our pace. That revealed profitability is less useful nowadays. Okay? Having done that, now we move on to this concept called cost minimization. Okay? Now, while the firm's objective, the first and foremost objective is profit maximization, important insights can be gained by looking at another possible objective, something called cost minimization. A firm exists to maximize profits. Yes, I don't doubt that. Okay, fine. But let's just, how shall I say this? Engage in a thought experiment. 그냥 머릿속에서 생각의 나래를 펼쳐보자는 거죠. What would a firm do if it's asked to minimize its cost rather than maximize profit? This is useful because it becomes almost like a mirror image of the optimization problem in consumer theory. So a cost minimizing firm's problem is minimize the entire cost by choosing labor and capital, appropriate level of capital, subject to the constraint that your chosen level of labor, your chosen level of capital, 당신이 선택한 노동과 자본이 will produce at least Y amount of output. So output is the constraint. Cost is the objective. Okay? In other words, what you're trying to do here is to find the cheapest way of producing a particular output level, Y. So that's going to depend on, your solution will be in the form of something like this. Your optimal X1 will depend on your own wage, that factor's own wage, and the other factor's wage, and the amount of output needed. Same for X2. The amount of machines you hire, amount of workers you hire will be dependent on rent, wage, and output. Simple as that. That's all that function is trying to say. Now, define a line as follows. W1 x1 plus W2 x2 equals C. How do we interpret this? That's all combination of labor and capital that gives the same total cost. In other words, every combination of x1 and x2, labor and capital, that in the end adds up to the same amount of cost. When all the wages and all the capital rents have been added up, same cost. All combinations of x1 and x2 are embodied in this simple line. Rearranging that in terms of x2 against x1 gives something like this. That is called the isocost line. 우리말로는 뭐라고 할까요? 정확합니다. 등량곡선, 등비용곡선, 등이윤곡선. 아무튼 아이소 나오면 그냥 다 등이에요. 등. So, the further away this isocost line is away from the origin, that means the cost is higher. 비용이 높아진다는 얘기죠. 원점에서 멀어질수록. 그죠? But on x1 and x2 space, we can also draw something called isoquant, 등량곡선. That gave you the all possible combinations of x1 and x2 that yield the same level of output. Doesn't this look familiar? 이거 되게 어디서 뭔가 본 것 같은 그래프스럽지 않아요? 그죠? So the optimality condition is this. You're trying to minimize cost as much as possible. But 비용을 줄이려면 원점으로 가까워져야겠죠? Suppose you're producing here. You have to produce at least Y level of output. Y만큼은 생산하면서 비용을 줄여라 하잖아요. 지금 목표가. 그죠? Y만큼은 생산하면서 비용을 줄이려면 that's a feasible point. That will allow you to produce Y. Except it's not the most efficient point. Why? By moving here, you can further reduce your cost. 비용을 더 줄일 수 있는 여지가 남아 있잖아요. 그죠? 쭉쭉쭉쭉 내려오겠죠. 그죠? 해서 다 왔습니다. 쭉 하고 여기까지 왔어요. So you end up here. That optimality point is going to be characterized by one thing. The slope of the isocost line is tangential to the slope of the isoquant. 등량곡선의 기울기와 등비용곡선의 기울기가 서로 접한다. 다 본 개념이에요. 그죠? But we know that the slope of the isoquant is given by the ratio of two marginal products. And your Y, sorry, your isocost line rather, has slope W1 over W2. What that means is this, very simple. The ratio of marginal products between two factors of production, capital labor marginal production cost, sorry, marginal product ratio, 그거 우리가 기술 대체율이라고 불렀습니다. Must be equal to their wage. Yep. You can also get this from the profit maximizing condition, by the way, as well. If you type in P and P here, you're going to get that. Okay? Like this. That's the optimal point. the slope of the isoquant is equal to the slope of the isocost line. So the solution looks more or less like consumer theory. TRS, change that to MRS. W1 over W2, change that to P1 over P2. You get consumer theory. Relative price equals marginal rate of substitution. That was the consumer end. Technical rate of substitution equaling relative wage. That's the producer theory end. However, there is an important difference. Here's the really important thing. It's a sort of material that you can ask really easily in exam. What's the difference between this diagram and consumer theory diagram? 그냥 기술 대체율과 한계 대체율이 다른 겁니다. 이러지 말고요. 좀 더 옵티마이제이션에 대해서 제대로 생각을 해봤을 때 뭐가 다릅니까? 이게 뭡니까? 하나는 미니마이즈 하려고 하는 거고 하나는 맥시마이즈 하려고 하는 것. Possibly. 그렇죠. 비슷한 얘기인데 내가 조금 더 explain 해야 될 것 같은데. So the key point, the key difference is this. In consumer theory, you hold your budget constraint. The straight line is your constraint. Given the straight line, what's the highest utility can you attain? What's the outermost indifference curve you can get to? 얘가 constraint고 얘가 objective였죠. So the straight line was the constraint. The curved line was the objective. Here, the curved line, the isoquant, is your objective. Sorry, constraint. Sorry, your constraint. You have to produce at least this amount of output. Then your objective is this straight line. Your objective, you're trying to get it down as much as possible. So while the tangency between the curved line and the straight line looks really similar, in consumer theory, the straight line is the constraint. In producer theory, the straight line is actually your objective. There's the key difference. All written down there. So you may want to, I don't know, mark a star or something like that. And then there's also another way to find out about production function, like here, revealed cost minimization. So let's talk about this slightly for a time being. This is another attempt at trying to get to the production function. Just like before. Revealed preference, revealed cost maximization, revealed profit maximization. So that's where sort of economics is hugely, spent a lot of effort into. You observe something, but you don't observe the other thing. Assuming a particular set of circumstances, can you deduce the shape of something that you cannot directly observe by looking at something, their choices? So it's like this. Suppose there are two factor prices in time t and in time s. And the firm chooses x1t, x2t, x1s, x2s in each case. Obviously, the important assumption here is that between t and s, the firm's production function remains the same. 이게 문제입니다, 항상. 우리 그때 대비 기술이 변했는데요. 기술이 바뀌었어요. 이래버리면 할 말이 없어집니다만 그러지 않게 짧은 시기를 보죠. Wages change, X's change. Then, for a rational optimizing firm, look at this. x1t, x2t must have been preferred to x1s and x2s because it yielded lower cost. But x1s and x2s will have been chosen in time s because it gives less cost than x1t and x2t. 그러니까 이게 선택됐을 때는 얘가 옵티멀하니까 선택됐을 거고 이게 선택됐을 때는 얘가 옵티멀하니까 선택됐을 거다라는 얘기입니다. 더 높은 비용을 주는데 일부러 그걸 찾아서 선택하진 않았겠지라고만 그냥 가정을 하면 돼요. 요거에 대해서는 reveal preference 때하고 똑같은 얘기인데 좀 많이 얘기는 안 할 겁니다. 저걸 하는 이유가 특별한 컨디션 하나 때문에 그래요. 특별한 컨디션. Now let's look at the second inequality here. Okay? So what you do is bring this and this to here and here and bring that and that to there and there. 왼쪽에 있던 거는 오른쪽으로 갈까요? 오른쪽에 있던 건 왼쪽으로 가고요. 얘네는 왼쪽으로, 얘네는 오른쪽으로 가세요. 그럼 마이너스 사인은 다 붙지만 inequality는 그대로 있겠죠. So the inequality sign will remain the same regardless of where you send them. Right? Now, if we know this, what can we know about that? Must hold. Yeah? Adding wise, it's not going to be a problem. So you add. 진짜 포인트 안 되는 게 정말 짜증나네. You add the first inequality. 아예 직접 하죠, 우리도. If you look at this, 얘들은 다 똑같습니다. 그죠? They are all the same. Yep. So you can rearrange in terms of that. W1t minus W1s x1t plus W2t minus W2s x2t W1t minus W1s x1s plus W2t minus W2s x2s 더한 거 없어요. 그냥 더하고 빼고 난 다음에 그냥 팩토라이즈만 해주고 있는 겁니다. 그죠? You don't have to finish here, by the way. That is equal to this. That is equal to that. So bring everything to the left-hand side. But this is essentially how much wage changed between time t and time s. This is how much wage x1 changed between time t and time x. This is how much change, So just put it in delta sign. Now suppose that nothing happened to x2. Nothing happened to the wage of x2. Okay? Nothing happened to this. That means delta w1, delta x1 must be smaller than naught. How can you have that? If the wage goes up, your x1 must go down. Your wage goes down, x1 must go up. So I spent this much time deriving that simple result. The higher the wage, the fewer people you will hire. The entire math I spent is just done to just show that. Whatever you higher must be a function of that factor's wage. And the more expensive that factor, the less you hire. That's intuition. You might think, hang on, why are we even learning about this? Yeah? I think, Anders, you might be thinking about that deep down in your heart. Yeah, yep. But I think there's the answer I will give to you. Let's go back to week 1, week 2, week 3. What did I say? Economics is about common sense, but deriving that common sense as a result of the optimizing choice of each and every individual. That's the difficult part. 당연히 상식이죠. 임금이 올랐는데 노동자들을 덜 고용한다. 상식이에요. 상식인데 그 상식을 경제라는 프레임워크 속에 어떻게 집어넣냐고. How do you justify that common sense? You can either stay and say, that's common sense, full stop. Or you can build a model, you can build a framework, you can discuss the implications of rationality. 합리적이라면 이렇게 할 것이다라는 거에 대한 prediction을 갖고 then you find again and again, you've derived line by line by line until you arrive back at that stupidly simple common sense result. But that common sense is no longer just a common sense, no longer just an intuition. It is now a proper result of a properly rational, optimizing model framework that you set out right from the start. That's the difference. 그냥 상식이다 라고 얘기하고 끝나버릴 거냐. 수학과에는 그렇게 했다가는 0점 받고 땡이죠, 그죠? 이건 당연한 거 아니냐. 1 더하기 1은 2 아니냐. 뭐 이게 아니라 No. Actually what that means is that you can derive our common sense. You can justify the actual behavior of what we do from the thread of reasoning, of rational reasoning. 이게 되게 논리적인 거하고 관련이 많은 겁니다. 그래서 어떻게 보면.